Is that okay?
Seen it? Good morning, good morning. Check, check, 1, 2, good morning. Welcome.
Is everybody watching this? Yeah. How's it going, John? All right. So, you know, the wind is strong tomorrow, yesterday?
Mug focus. Mug focus. You're all good for mug focus?
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Craig. Thank you all for coming. My name is Tina Tebow, and I'm the Director of Media Relations for the province of Nova Scotia. Joining us today, we have Premier Stephen McNeil, Halifax Mayor Mike Savage, Paul Mason, Executive Director, Emergency Management Office, Karen Hutt, CEO, Nova Scotia Power, Captain Guillaume Lafrance, Chief of Staff, Joint Task Force Atlantic, Ansel Langell, Senior Manager of Emergency Management Programs, Red Cross, Erica Fleck, Assistant Chief, Community Risk Reduction and Logistics, Halifax Regional Fire and Emergency. Again, similar to what we have been doing, I'll ask for your attention, please, in the back. Thank you. Similar to what we've been doing over the last few days, we will, each participant will provide a brief update, and then we will go, we'll take questions from the media. Premier?
Thanks very much. First of all, let me begin by thanking all of you who are here and for your continued communications to Nova Scotians, continuing to keep Nova Scotians informed on what's been happening with this abnormal weather event that hit our province. And through that, and because of that, we've seen the level of cooperation from Nova Scotians when it comes to ensuring that we get our essential services back in place. But also, and equally as important, we've seen Nova Scotians continue to do and reach out to their neighbours to ensure that they have the supports that are required as we deal with some of the challenges that our province still face. I want to acknowledge Minister Porter, who's not here. Minister Porter was here on the initial night of the storm, and he's continued to work not only in his own constituency but across the province, representing our government and working with his deputy, who is with us here today. I want to thank all of those who in municipal services for your tremendous work and support. I want to acknowledge the mayor and his team here in Halifax, who have been tremendous support. They were here from the very beginning. The planning that we started didn't happen on the day of the storm. This planning started at the very beginning when we started to get word that the storm was going to hit Nova Scotia, and I want to acknowledge that and thank you, Your Worship, as well as to our municipal partners across the province. I don't want anyone to be confused. This storm didn't hit one part of our province; it hit the entire part of all of Nova Scotia. And Paul and his team here, Paul, thank you, and as your network of people across the province, and continue to ensure that communities from one end of Nova Scotia to the other are receiving the services that they require. And I don't think there's any one in this room who's probably feeling the brunt of this storm from one end of Nova Scotia to the other than Nova Scotia Power. And I want to acknowledge Karen Hutt, who is here, and her leadership team. But I also want to acknowledge the men and women in her organization who are from one end of Nova Scotia to the other, have been working to restore power. As I said the very first time I was here, the utility had crews out well in advance of this storm to respond when the weather left, to respond to restore power. And I, for one, am grateful to the men and women in those trucks as they roll through our communities and begin to restore power, and they're doing it in an effective way that we are seeing such a reduction in the numbers of people without power. So I want to acknowledge their tremendous work. I also want to say thank you to the federal government. The Prime Minister is in town today, along with Minister Goodale. From the very beginning, they've added support through the Canadian Armed Forces. With Captain LaFrance is here. Rear Admiral Baines has been heavily involved in this. I want to extend our appreciation. There's a level of comfort, I think, for all Canadians, but indeed, I'll speak for Nova Scotians when they see uniformed officers rolling into our communities to help clear up debris. And oftentimes when we think of the service of men and women in the uniform, we think of what's happening beyond our own borders. But I think we need to acknowledge what happens inside of Canada. And whenever there's a disaster, men and women in uniform show up, and we're grateful for your work and effort, and we want to thank you for that. I also want to say to Ansel and Canadian Red Cross, thank you for the work that you've been doing. I had a chance to be at the Canada Game Centre a few days ago. I was at your centre at the Boys and Girls Club here in Dartmouth. Your volunteers are making a difference. All of us were part of this storm, but I can't imagine what those Nova Scotians felt like when they were losing the roof off their apartment building to be put on a bus, but they were welcomed at the Canada Game Centre by volunteers across the province, men and women like you, who have made a big difference for them. And because of that, they're more optimistic about their future than they might otherwise been. So thank you on behalf of all of us. And to Erica Fleck, who's here, Erica, let me say thank you. You're a true leader. We very much appreciate your steady hand and confidence in this and uniting all the many forces that are in this room. I wish more Nova Scotians could have the privilege that I have to come in to this building. When I was here a few days ago, I said this message. I was in a room full of leaders that on any day in their own workplace, they would be the ones in charge, they would be the ones making decisions. And they all came in and took a 2IC role and allowed everyone to fall in behind the incident commander because it was in the best interest of Nova Scotians. And because of that, we're seeing a response, a unified response to this storm that I don't think this province has ever seen. There's always things we can do and will do to learn from, but I am grateful for our many partners and the many organizations, both private and public, who have come together in the best interest of Nova Scotians to put our province back in good shape to allow us to get back to a level of normalcy. So to all of you, thank you very much for your continued effort on behalf of all Nova Scotians.
Mayor Savage.
Thank you very much, Premier, ladies and gentlemen. I want to acknowledge the Deputy Mayor, Tony Mancini, who's here, who stepped in very ably on behalf of the municipality and showed great leadership over the weekend while I was working my way back here on Sunday. I want to echo those things that the Premier has said. I've long said that we have the best EMO in Canada, and it's because people do put their egos aside. They get down to the work that has to be done. All three orders of government working together. The Premier and I have chatted since the storm about this. I've spoken with the Prime Minister, who will be in town today, and look forward to seeing him sometime shortly. But I want to thank the men and women who do all the work. So Erica Fleck is remarkable. And, you know, when I was talking to her yesterday, she reminded me that we did a sort of a mock disaster program a few months ago, which was very similar, in fact, to this one. So it's amazing the work that is done. She is a true leader. I want to thank Jacques Dubé, our CIO, who has also been hands-on on this for us on behalf of the municipality. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Paul, the Provincial EMO staff, the Red Cross, and everybody who stepped in a remarkable way. Karen from Nova Scotia Power we were texting while I was away, and since we've been back and getting updates, and I think Nova Scotia Power prepared for this in advance, dealt with it at a difficult time. It's hard to predict exactly what the circumstances will be, and we thank the crews who are working really hard. The only thing I would like to add is our own staff at HRM. Our TPW crews were out before the storm. We took them off during the storm, or else they would have stayed out working on this. They went back, I think, at midnight on Saturday night out on the streets as soon as it was safe to do so, working 24/7. Brad Anguish, our director, people like Bev Odette, who have been here at this, and the men and women who are out. I've seen them on the streets of Halifax. I know that it's appreciated by the people when they see them coming to help out and doing remarkable work. So hats off to our folks who've been on the streets clearing trees and making things safer. I also want to acknowledge the folks in the comfort centers and the shelter. I had a chance with Councillor Mancini yesterday to visit the comfort center in Dartmouth East. There are people who are hurt by this, and as is often the case, sometimes the people who have the least are hurt the most, and we need to be mindful of that as we deal with trying to get them back on their feet again. I think that the work that's been done here has truly been remarkable. There's very little ego involved once you come through those doors, even for politicians, it seems. People just go and do the work that needs to be done. Remarkable leadership by Erica Fleck, Chief of Police, Chief of Fire. We're still dealing with circumstances, but we're going to make sure that we do it safely. Quick is good, safely is better, and that'll guide the work that we're doing. So thank everybody who's up here. I had a chance to talk to Rear Admiral Craig Baines as well, and appreciate the role that the military has played in this. And I really thank everybody for an extraordinary effort. We have lots to do, but we will get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Paul?
Yeah, speaking for the, Speaking for the Provincial Emergency Management Office, we've been activated since 700 hours on Saturday morning. We continue to operate in concert with all of our various partners. We received excellent support from our municipal partners. Thank you. Our municipal partners, our provincial departments, and our federal partners, and our critical infrastructure partners as well. Especially like to note the contribution made by the Canadian Armed Forces and the Coast Guard to our response. We've seen good progress over the past few days. Things continue to move in the right direction. We're going to continue to work diligently with all our various stakeholders, supporting our various municipal partners as well, from one end of the province to the others, through the various comfort centres and what have you that stay open. And just like to encourage the public to be mindful of the work that's going on. There's a lot of heavy equipment and still some trees and wires and what have you. So we just encourage people to be cognizant of that as we move through this event.
Thank you, Paul. Karen?
Thank you and good morning. A little more than 48 hours ago, we began restoring approximately 400,000 customers. At this time, we have about 100,000 customers still without power. The progress that we've made in restoring power to 300,000 customers is a reflection of our early planning, the work of the team, and the excellent coordination with our restoration partners. Thankfully, we continue to work safe. Yesterday afternoon, we revised our estimated restoration times, and this is a reflection of information that we continue to receive from the field. Today, we're advancing our work in communities all across the province. Additional power line crews have arrived to assist with the restoration, and more are on their way. Our crews are being reinforced and supported by the hundreds of additional hands through our partners with EMO, the province, and the Canadian Armed Forces. We're also coordinating with the EMO office closely regarding the restoration of power to municipal water and sewer services, along with communication sites. We continue to staff our customer care facility 24/7, and we will do that until we are done. Thank you all for your continued support and patience as our team safely continues in our restoration efforts.
Thank you, Karen. Hans?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your kind words, Premier, Your Worship, Nova Scotia Power, EMO. I'll just give you a quick update from a military perspective of our contribution to the relief efforts to the people of Nova Scotia. We currently have 380 troops assigned to the operation, and we expect an extra 70 reservists generated from Nova Scotia to augment the force for a package of approximately 450 folks. Over the last 24 hours, in coordination with EMO, we realized that the bulk of the demands here in HRM were filled, and we reached a certain level of stability. Therefore, our next objective is to really spread throughout Nova Scotia to help out the entirety of the province. Therefore, we now have a permanent presence in the armories in Yarmouth, in Bridgewater, in Amherst, Port Hawkesbury, and Sydney, with the bulk of the force still located here in Halifax. We'll be dispatching forces on a daily basis to those areas of need to support the efforts of Nova Scotia Power and EMO, with probably our focus now for the next 48 hours to be around the Bridgewater area. Other than that, we are very proud to assist Nova Scotia, its Canadians, assisting Canadians, and thanks the cooperation and the efforts made by all to render to everybody a level of comfort and stability in their lives. Thank you.
Good morning. The Canadian Red Cross continues to work very closely with municipal and provincial officials to determine how best we can help the citizens of Nova Scotia. We're still present at the shelter at the Canada Games Centre, and we'll be making a decision later today on the status of that location. Over the course of this response, 53 individual or unique volunteers have responded to this response, primarily here in Halifax. But volunteers in other parts of the province have responded to events indirectly related to Hurricane Dorian. There was a couple of house fires related to generators not working properly. So I'll follow that along with a message of safety. Nova Scotians still without power and relying on generator power, please follow proper operating procedures and use those units safely so we don't end up with other instances where people are impacted by a personal disaster. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ansel. Erica?
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank, obviously, the Premier and my most favorite mayor in the world for your kind words. So the cleanup in HRM continues, obviously, throughout, and we will remain 24/7 until that cleanup is finished. We are coordinating very closely with the province, with our partners, and I just want to add that if we didn't already have that solid relationship built, with us being next door to each other and continually talking daily, if not, or weekly, if not daily on most times. And now it's if I don't go 5 minutes without talking to them, I wonder what's wrong. But, you know, it's just added to, you know, how successful we have been in the municipality because of the relationships that we have already built. And again, Department of Lands and Forests is now working very closely with us, and we're creating plans to move outside of the core of HRM to get out in those rural areas belonging to the municipality so that we can focus some of our efforts there as well, that we obviously need to do for cleanup. We have many specialists, including arborists and machinery, that are here from out of province that we already had contracted. So they are already on the ground and have been working embedded as part of our transportation and public works crews for the cleanup throughout. We have a large sweeper that will be operational on Thursday that will be able to pick up larger amounts of debris on the roads. But our biggest message, of course, is always safety to our citizens. Please continue to call 311. Our crews are finding trees continue on power lines across roads that we weren't already aware of. And Halifax Regional spreads across almost 6,000 square kilometers. That's a lot of area, and we do base our work plans for the day based on the information that we are getting from 311 and our citizens. That is our best information that we could ever hope to receive. We do have 5 comfort centers that are continuing to operate today, and every day we base those opening on the individual needs of the communities where we continue to have no power, and we continue to put out food in some communities as well with our comfort centers to those citizens who do need it. Like the mayor said, we have citizens, some of those, you know, just can't afford to lose that. So we continue to push as many resources as we can, and we have 2 water points on each side of our municipality that will have water for our citizens that are on well water with no power. Thank you.
Thank you all for your updates. We'll now take questions from the media, and I ask you to perhaps say who your question is for, and then the participants can come forward.
Satisfied with the responses you see from the telephone companies for the telephone? And what needs to be done to provide minimum standard of backup in cases of an extended power outage?
I think it's fair that all Nova Scotians have not seen a weather event like this for quite some time. The physical infrastructure damage that happened from one end of their province to the other is unprecedented. And everyone is working to their best ability to restore that power as quickly as possible, to restore telecommunications as quickly as possible. And like all events, we will take a post-mortem afterwards and see what our successes were and what we can learn from.
Are you satisfied? I mean, I'm asking this question not for me. I'm asking because we're getting calls from all over the province saying, what happened to the landline that failed? The cell line has failed. What's going on with the service in this province?
So oftentimes, Paul, people don't recognize telecommunications requires power. We've been very clear there are 400,000 Nova Scotians without power. The fact that we have 300,000 Nova Scotians that have had their power restored is a great tribute to the utility. As that comes back online, we'll see solid service going up. With all of our telecommunications partners, they have an auxiliary backup. Oftentimes, batteries are about 10 hours, 10, 12 hours. They have generator capacity in some of those sites. But we'll look at all of the response that we had to this storm and a post-mortem to ensure that when the next weather event comes, that we continue to build on the successes that we've seen Paul and his team here have, and the collaboration that we've seen with all of our partners, including the telecommunications.
Can you answer the question, though, from someone who's in Canning or wherever who saw their landline fail when it didn't fail after one? That's the question.
Because I think the important message, Paul, is this storm didn't just hit Halifax. One was a concentrated storm in many ways. The damage was significant and severe here in HRM, but in many parts of the province, for example, where I lived, there was very little impact. My constituency is still without power. But the reality of it is men and women are working to the best of their ability day and night to restore that power, and the impact on this storm has been much greater on the entire province. That's the message I hope that all of us understand. This wasn't a concentrated storm. We couldn't deploy all of the assets of our respective partners to one area to restore. We had to deploy them across the province. And that's why the level of collaboration that has happened here has been phenomenal. It's why we're seeing the successes we have. You're right, for those who are still waiting for power or cell service, that's not enough. We know that. It's why we're working hard. It's why we're doing the collaboration we're doing. It's why we'll continue to work to restore that infrastructure.
Can we have, while you have me here, can you give us an update on the status of the investigation into the crane collapse? It's a labor department investigation division in the province. Where is that right now?
We've gone outside the province to bring in a structural engineer expert. Process is still ongoing, and when it's finished, we'll communicate it to Nova Scotians. Our issue now is ensuring that we take down the remainder of the crane to ensure that we don't cause any more issues related to the properties in and around that site. That's why you would have seen the evacuation.
Are you looking at putting any rules in place so that construction companies, like it's mandatory for them to secure debris and construction material before storms?
Well, listen, I'm proud of the fact that Nova Scotians heeded the warning, including many of our private sector people. We've seen a tremendous preparation for this storm, and it's why we're seeing, I believe, some of the successes we're having early on is because Nova Scotians prepared early. Not only individual Nova Scotians, but our corporate community. There's always going to be those issues. We'll look at those in a postmortem to address and see what we could have done differently on some of those sites. But right now, my job is, and my job will continue to be, is to support our partners, support the men and women who are out there responding to the needs of our families, and that's what we will be focused on until every Nova Scotian life gets back to a level of normalcy.
Farmers obviously lost a lot in the valley. Are you looking at any kind of compensation for them, or will you be asking the federal government for that?
That'll be a part of the, in the future days. Right now, we're focused on the infrastructure challenges that we have and working with our partners to continue to make sure that we get power back on, we get telecommunications up, we get our schools back open, and then we ask everyone to keep track of what's happening in their particular businesses, and we'll look at them in the future.
Any update on schools for tomorrow?
No, we'll look at that further today. It's certainly our hope with the success that we're seeing in terms of electricity going back on. We've had assessment of our infrastructure, so I would expect that we'll have schools open tomorrow, but we really won't know that until the end, because ultimately what this really is about for us is safety. I wouldn't want my children to be sent to school in a situation where some trees may still be an issue, or quite frankly, if we still have places where power lines are down. I've said this many times, they might not be delivering energy to your house, but there's energy in those lines and they're dangerous. We need the experts to go in and deal with them. So we'll talk with Paul and his team and all of our partners here. And if it's safe for kids to be in school tomorrow, they'll be. If there's any indication that it's not, then they'll be home.
La France, l'État a évalué les besoins sur le terrain hier. Quels sont ces besoins? Que font-ils aujourd'hui?
On a déployé hier nos forces aériennes, 2 hélicoptères qui sont basés à Shearwater, qui ont volé partout dans la province pour établir des endroits où est-ce que on avait besoin d'amener les véhicules d'urgence le plus rapidement possible. J'ai parlé de Bridgewater tantôt, où est-ce qu'on a noté, où est-ce que beaucoup de routes étaient bloquées. Donc, on va déployer aujourd'hui, basé sur l'information qu'on a eue hier, des troupes et de l'équipement afin de nettoyer les routes pour donner accès aux véhicules de Nova Scotia Power pour redonner l'électricité aux gens et rétablir les services. En plus, avec l'expérience et avec l'information qu'on a eu aujourd'hui avec les troupes déployées à partir surtout d'Halifax, on va pouvoir réviser notre plan pour être encore plus efficace demain et jeudi.
Vous avez parlé de nombre de tantôt lors de votre allocution en anglais. Pouvez-vous me rappeler ces chiffres-là? Combien s'ajoute aujourd'hui à combien qui étaient déjà sur le terrain?
En ce moment, on a 380 troupes qui sont assignées à l'opération. La plupart sont basées à Willow Park, dans le centre-ville d'Halifax. On va rajouter un autre 70 réservistes qui ont été générés surtout d'ici en Nouvelle-Écosse pour un total d'à peu près 450. On garde en garnison, en moyenne, pour le support de ces troupes-là, une 50aine de personnes. Donc, on essaie d'avoir à peu près 400 personnes sur le terrain tous les jours pour aider aux services provinciaux.
Pouvez-vous nous rappeler sont basés où en
En ce moment, on a une présence qui est permanente en utilisant les garnisons de réserve et de la milice. On a une présence à Bridgewater, on a une présence à Yarmouth, à Amherst, à Port Hawkesbury et ensuite à Sydney.
Puis la dernière question, je me demandais, il y a des gens, beaucoup de gens à qui on a parlé dans les rues hier qui disaient on aimerait ça qu'ils viennent sur nos terrains, enlever les arbres. Est-ce que les gens peuvent s'attendre à ça?
Pas en ce moment. Il faut comprendre que les services qui ont été requis des Forces armées canadiennes sont des services d'urgence, des services qui sont vraiment là pour soulager la population. Donc, on n'est pas mandaté en ce moment pour aller sur les terrains de monsieur et madame pour nettoyer les débris qui ont été mis sur leur propriété. C'est vraiment pour supporter les efforts à l'échelle provinciale et non pas individuelle.
Question for the province customers without power today. Can you walk me through a couple of questions that we're getting from the public? Can NSB explain why some people's power is coming on and then going back off again?
Yes, there have been instances where that occurs, and so it could be a circumstance where the teams have scanned what they believe is all of the damage, and they've cleared all of the damage, and they're ready to try to close a feeder, as it's called. And if they determine that there is maybe even sometimes something not much larger than a twig can be enough for the equipment to flip back into self-protection mode and go off. And so those are some of the circumstances that have been happening. When that does happen, the crews are, of course, instantly aware of it, and they go back at their work and start again.
Would you care to deal with the conversation about burying power lines? Is it time to have the conversation about burying power lines?
Look, this is a conversation that is an ongoing one, and it's a component of our infrastructure. But you know, there are some practical realities around that. There are cost issues around that. So we're happy to have that conversation. I think right now we're focused on getting power restored to our customers. Once we get that done, we're happy to sit down and talk about any of those issues.
For the cell phone customers out there and the landline customers out there who want to know if it all depends now on electricity being restored, when will those systems, what's your best estimate on when cell service will be restored across the province?
What I can tell you is we have a dedicated team in place who are doing nothing other than this. They're working with the providers, and as we gather information from the providers on what the specific requirements are, and as we get some of our own damage assessors out there, we're dispatching crews as we speak. This is a matter of high priority, as you would expect, and our teams are focused on that now.
Is the damage worse than you thought? Like, how would you describe it, I guess? Because you've already restored power to a large number of people who were impacted.
Right. Well, you know, I'll say this again, the damage is widespread. This is a provincial-wide impact, and so if you think about it, we have 32,000 kilometers of distribution lines all across the province, so that's a lot of geography that we need to cover. What I am pleased about is that the transmission infrastructure, which is really the backbone of the system, everything starts with the transmission, and we need to have that up and running. That is in very, very good shape, and that's causing no problems at all whatsoever for us today. We've also addressed the major pockets of concentrated customers, the big feeder lines, the lines that connect lots and lots of customers. Those are well in hand. So now we're starting to move down through the list, and you're right, there's a couple of different factors at play. One is certainly the complexity of some of the repairs. You've seen lots of photos, and there are thousands and thousands of trees on lines that we have either removed or in the process of removing. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 300 poles that we will reset. So when you take down a pole and put a new one up, that's at best a 5 to 6 hour exercise. So there's nothing insignificant about that. So that kind of work is occurring. And then geographically, we serve all pockets of Nova Scotia. We have customers everywhere, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of all of those customers. And so that's why it's been so important for our damage assessors to get out and do their work and understand really what we're dealing with. So by the time we roll a truck of power line technicians, they have all the supplies, they have what they need. So when they get on site, they can begin the restore.
And for those who are still waiting to have their power restored, what's like the, I don't want to say like deadline, but like what's like the latest you're expecting to have all customers up? Can you give us an estimate?
Sure, it's a good question. So yesterday afternoon, we updated our estimated restore times. That was a promise that we made to our customers right from the get-go, that as soon as we had better information, we would do that. We were able to do a broad update across the entire province. So customers in different neighborhoods are starting to see different restore times, and that's a reflection of the damage assessment work that our field team has been doing. It's our target that we would have about another 50,000 restored today. So if you think about it, at the end of today, we hope that we're going into tomorrow with somewhere around 50,000 customers left to be restored. From there, and I should say that as we've had to move restore times out, we're now in the process of making personal phone calls to those customers. So we're trying to reach all of those customers to explain exactly what's going on. We know people want their power on, we understand that, but what they also want is good information. They need to be able to plan, and so we're giving them the best information that they have so they can understand what's happening, what the nature of the repairs are, and all of those kinds of things. At this point, I would say that we're working to later this week objective where we will really be down to the one-offs. I can tell you that when I left the EOC, we had about 5,400 one-offs. So that means we have 54 customers that we need to figure out, do we need crews on those sites? We know that there's going to be a little bit of duplication buried in there. We're expecting that, but that's the kind of magnitude. But we'll be working with our customers throughout the course of this week to make sure they know exactly what's going on.
We have time for a few more questions. You're taking power from start at one this week.
Yes.
Can you say how many municipal water systems are still offline and when you expect them to get back online?
I'm not sure of the current count at this point. We can get back to you on that, but what I can tell is that we have folks stationed here who have been working with our EMO partners to make sure that the information is getting to our teams as quickly as possible. Critical infrastructure is always on the top of our list, and we, for the same issue around cell coverage, that we have a dedicated team, we also have a dedicated team working on critical infrastructure.
I don't know who I would ask this for, but the question we've been getting is why aren't there more comfort stations in rural Nova Scotia?
Wherever there was a need, where there was a request with our municipal partners, we would open those comfort stations. If you know of a community, if there's a community where people require that support, we would be more than happy here with Paul and his team to open them. But at the peak of the storm, there was roughly, I think, 80, close to a little over 80 comfort stations across the province. They would be opened and closed based on usage. But if there's an area where people are looking for, or for municipal partners, just call in and we can activate it.
Is there any damage to any schools or any still without power as you look towards tomorrow about potentially reopening?
We'll get a better assessment today, but yeah, there's still a few, but we'll get a better assessment at the end of the day.
We'll take two more questions. I know it's early, but do you have any idea of cost from this or like how much damage?
No, it's really, we'll focus on that once we get everyone back with power back, their utilities back, a level of normalcy, get their kids back in school, and do all the things that people are concerned about today, and then we'll look at the cost of it at the end.
Would you have a message to Nova Scotians out there, one, check on their loved ones after this storm? They can't do it because they don't have landline or cell phone. What's your message to them?
Continue to do the best they can to check on their loved ones, whether they're next door or in neighboring communities, rely on family and friends. I think it's important for all of us to be mindful of that. If we have a friend who is actually in a part of the province that is without communication, then take that responsibility ourselves to go check on their loved ones for them. I think we as a collective need to put our arms around one another as a province to ensure that if anyone is feeling vulnerable, that we support them. The mayor spoke about those with the least amongst us are probably impacted the most by this storm. I think all of us who are blessed and fortunate enough to have things, we should be sharing those and reaching out and ensuring that we can support those families in their time of need. But do what Nova Scotians do. We're caring people. Let's make sure that we reach out to our neighbors and friends. And if we know of our allies and friends who have loved ones in neighboring communities, let's check on them for them.
Steve, I'd like to say a word on the comfort centers. Just on the comfort center question, Erica knows this very well, but we have 3 comfort centers in sort of eastern part of our province, in Musquodoboit Harbour, in Middle Musquodoboit and Gates Brook. We also have them in Dartmouth and in Halifax. What I want to say is that our councillors, people like Councillor Hensby, Councillor Adams, whose district has suffered a lot of damage in the storm surge in places like Ketch Harbour and Sambro, our councillors are very much plugged into all of this, and we're communicating with them to make sure that citizens have what they need during this time.
Could we just ask a quick question with the crane there? I'm just wondering your thoughts on it, because obviously it impacts your residents. A lot of people are concerned about it. There's some concern it could shift and fall. What do you tell residents?
Well, as the Premier said, the first thing is safety. So we want to get the crane down as quickly as we can, but the most important thing is to get it down safely. So yesterday, Erica would have been intimately involved in this. Our Chief of Police, our Fire Chief, the CAO, Brad Anguish, and the engineering side have all been involved with the provincial government, who take a lead on the safety side of this. I think it's a difficult time for people who live in the area and the businesses who are inconvenienced by this, and that'll be stage 2 for sure. The stage 1 is getting it down safely and making sure that all the agencies are coordinated, and we really encourage people who are curious about this to kind of stay as much away from the area as they can. I will say that with all the construction that's happening in HRM, not just cranes but building materials, that our folks were out last week talking to everybody to say, let's make sure that we have these things secured, building materials, cranes and other equipment for building. We're very blessed that there haven't been any fatalities, or it doesn't seem like serious injuries, and I think it's a credit to the people who got out in front of this, not just afterwards, to say this is a potentially dangerous thing. We got to get the crane down, we got to get it down safely.
Thank you all for coming.
That's about it.
Yeah.